Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. My name is Lily, aka Lily Coy, and I would like to make sure that no one gets anemic from a vegan diet. So I think that the most important thing that everyone should know about veganism and iron is that there are two different kinds of iron. There's heme iron and non-heme iron. As you can probably tell by the visual aids, heme iron is found mostly in animals, and non-heme iron is found mostly in plants. So the biggest difference between these two types of iron is in their absorption. So heme iron found in animal foods is very easily absorbed in our intestines. Non-heme iron found in plant foods can be really easily absorbed, or it can be harder to absorb. We'll get into the reasons for that in a few minutes. So because iron is such a vital nutrient, I mean, it's necessary for like virtually every function that goes on in the human body, it's easy to assume that higher absorption would mean better. Yeah, more is better, right? Not so. Because the thing about iron is that even though it is so important, it's also pro-oxidant, meaning that it can easily oxidize and become a free radical once it's inside our body. Once it's oxidized, it can damage our DNA, and high levels of iron are associated with Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, colorectal cancer, heart disease, diabetes, and other forms of cancer. So too much heme iron could actually be killing us. And this is when the beauty of non-heme iron becomes apparent. Because you see, non-heme iron is really polite. You eat the plant foods and it gets into your intestines and it just kind of chills out and it's like, do you want to absorb me? Or if you don't want to absorb me, like no pressure, you can just poop me out, I don't mind. And the human body is always keeping a really close eye on our iron levels. When iron levels go down, absorption of non-heme iron goes up. When the iron level in our body is high, absorption of non-heme iron goes down. With this choice of absorption available, our bodies are able to very closely regulate and balance its iron levels. An interesting thing that happens to a lot of people who switch to a vegan or a plant-based diet is that they make their switch and then eventually they go to the doctor and they get a blood test done, and that blood test comes back and it shows that their stored iron, aka their serum ferritin level, is on the lower end of normal. A lot of people and even a lot of doctors don't know any better, and so when they see that low, they say, oh, you need to increase how much iron you're eating, and oh, that vegan diet's not very good for you. But the thing is that lower levels of stored iron, aka serum ferritin, are normal in vegans. In fact, it appears that that might actually be the way our bodies are supposed to be, since iron is such an oxidant. But labs that test our blood don't necessarily test for what's optimal, they test for what's normal. So if you're on a vegan or a plant-based diet and a blood test comes back and says that your stored iron or serum ferritin is a little bit low, don't stress. This actually means that you are in an optimized state for non-heme iron absorption. That said, the recommended daily intake for iron stands at 8 milligrams per day for men and 8 to 18 milligrams per day for women. Studies have shown that your average vegan lady of childbearing years gets 22 to 23 milligrams of iron per day, and that's like not even trying. If you start to look at the iron levels in a lot of foods, especially whole plant foods, you'll realize that it is incredibly easy to get 8 milligrams of iron per day. It's like, it's honestly hard to not get it. And so iron isn't really that big of a deal because our bodies are so good at recycling our own iron. Virtually every old cell in our body that's broken down is recycled. In fact, our bodies are so efficient at keeping iron around that the only way that men and postmenopausal women lose iron is through the sloughing of dead skin cells and through the sloughing of the innermost lining of our digestive tract. or through injuries. Now, women of childbearing years, obviously we have a monthly ritual of purging iron from the body, which actually seems to be protective because women who still have a menstrual cycle are at lower risk of heart attack than men until we reach menopause, and then our risk goes up to meet men's. Because there's more iron in our body and the iron is oxidizing and hurting our blood vessels. Say no to heme iron. Now, when it comes to vegans and vegetarians, the Institute of Medicine looked at one crappy study, and they said that vegans and vegetarians need to take the recommended daily intake of iron and multiply that by 1.8 because we don't absorb non-heme iron so good. To address that recommendation, I would like to read a short quote. Two of my favorite registered dietitians who wrote Becoming Vegan, the comprehensive edition, had this to say about those recommendations. Quote unquote, "The higher recommendations for vegetarians is controversial because it was based on a single, poorly designed study. In this study, participants consumed vegetarian diets low in components known to enhance iron absorption and high in substances known to interfere with iron absorption. In addition, the study wasn't conducted on vegetarians or vegans who typically develop lower serum ferritin levels that optimize absorption. So, more comprehensive evidence suggests that vegan women of childbearing age should be fine with the 18 milligrams per day of iron that's recommended and that most of us easily get. So unless you're having symptoms of low iron-induced anemia, I don't think there's any reason to stress out and overload ourselves with non-heme iron. That said, there are so many delicious whole plant foods that are just chock full of non-heme iron that our bodies can choose to absorb or not. But I mostly want you to remember that high iron foods are whole plant foods. Once you start getting into refined food and processed stuff and vegan junk food, you're gonna start losing out on that natural iron that's found in whole plant foods. So some of the foods that are highest in iron include legumes. Soybeans are really high in iron, lentils, super high in iron, black turtle beans are all particularly rich, although all legumes have some. Seeds are like the iron all-stars. Flax seeds, chia seeds, hemp seeds especially. Pumpkin seeds, they're all quite high. Whole grains like oats, quinoa, and amaranth are good sources of iron. And of course, vegetables, especially leafy green vegetables like kale and spinach, are great sources of iron, as well as potatoes, leeks, and concentrated tomato products. So like sun-dried tomatoes or tomato paste can be really good sources of iron too. Some other random foods are actually pretty good sources, like raisins and currants. And then if you want to get into like the superfood realm, blackstrap molasses, spirulina, and dark chocolate are packed with iron. In addition to including iron-rich foods like these in your daily diet, it's also wise to optimize the absorption of the non-heme iron you eat. The easiest way to do this, and it is literally so easy, is to just eat vitamin C rich foods with your iron rich foods. Vitamin C rich foods actually converts the non-heme iron into its highly absorbable ferrous form. Conveniently, a lot of iron-rich whole plant foods are also high in vitamin C. That's just the beauty of whole plant foods. Including some fruit with your oatmeal. Vitamin C, iron. Eating a salad of dark leafy greens with red bell pepper and some orange juice squeezed on top. Bingo. Cooking lentils with tomato paste and eating it with dark leafy greens. Another way to boost iron absorption is to cook your grains and beans with garlic and onions. This can actually boost the absorption of iron and zinc by about 50%. Another thing we vegans should be aware of is avoiding anti-nutrient foods that could inhibit the absorption of iron. So phytates, you've probably heard of them. They're found in nuts, seeds and whole grains, they can bind to iron and prevent absorption. However, phytates can also bind to things like heavy metals and prevent their absorption. And phytates have been found to have high anti-cancer properties, so whether or not you want to totally eliminate those is your choice, but you would do so by pre-soaking your beans or whole grains or nuts before you eat them for 12 to 24 hours. Oxalates are another anti-nutrient that can impede iron absorption. However, oxalates, such as those found in spinach, generally speaking, preferentially bind to calcium over iron. So if you're eating spinach, you're probably still going to get the iron, but those oxalates are going to reduce the amount of calcium that you're getting from that meal. It's also smart to avoid taking calcium supplements with iron-rich foods or with iron supplements, although one might say it's just smart to avoid taking calcium supplements full stop since they're associated with a higher risk of dying, but that's a tangent we don't need to do. And then tannins can definitely inhibit iron absorption. Tannins are found in foods like chocolate and tea and coffee and wine and oak trees. And again, obviously, these are a lot of really healthy foods that we do want to include in our diet. The trick is to simply consume them separately from our purposefully iron-rich meals. I do this by having my cup of tea first thing in the morning on an empty stomach, and then I wait about an hour before I eat my iron-rich breakfast. Or I will have my tea or other tannin-rich libation about 2 hours after I eat, so that they don't mess with each other. Make sense? Good. If you follow these recommendations, you shouldn't have any issues getting sufficient iron on a vegan or plant-based diet. However, there are some people who are either genetically predisposed or they've had certain digestive tract type illnesses that affect their ability to properly absorb iron. If you're one of those people, you probably know it. You and your doctor have probably had a lot of conversations about this. You have probably had to supplement with iron many times in the past. You are one of the people who can really benefit from taking an iron supplement. For the rest of us who don't have those genetic predispositions and who have fairly healthy digestive tracts, it's much smarter to try to optimize iron absorption dietarily than it is to resort to a supplement. That's because supplemental iron can build up in our body and it becomes pro-oxidant. So if you're dealing with very low iron levels, by all means, if your doctor recommends it, take a supplement, get your levels back up, but once your levels are up, do your best to maintain that through diet. And of course, work with your doctor to keep an eye on those levels, okay? Okay, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video and learned heaps. The human body and whole plant foods, the way it works together is just, it's such a beautiful thing. Feel free to leave any questions or comments or your own excitedness about geeking out on this down below in the comments section. If you have questions about other nutrients that you need answered, you can leave those down below too, and I will have a look through and see what I can do. If you enjoyed this video and you are looking for ways to include whole plant foods in your daily life, definitely hit that subscribe button down below, ding the little bell, you will be notified whenever I upload new videos. And as always, until next time, make better choices for yourself. Nobody's gonna do it for you, and take really, really such good care of your beautiful selves. I will see you all so very soon. Bye!